On average, a person's heart beats up to 115,000 times in a single day. With your heart doing that much work, you can see why it's important to do everything you can to keep your ticker in tip-top condition.
When it comes to staying healthy, one of the most important factors to consider is that you're eating on a regular basis. In some cases, the benefits of one diet over another might not always be immediately obvious. That is, until you take the time to unpack all of the foods that are included in that diet, as well as their various health benefits.
Case in point, a diet based on foods that lower the chance of inflammation may be able to not only help you live a more comfortable life, but also a longer and healthier one as well.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to Bestie and ring the notification bell to stay in the loop on our daily videos and content.
According to the findings of a recent study, a diet that consists heavily of foods that are known to reduce inflammation has been linked to a reduced risk of early death. That means avoiding overly processed or manufactured foods and instead focusing on healthier whole ingredient foods such as ample amounts of fruits and vegetables. The study, headed by Dr. Joanna Kaluza, examined over 68,000 male and female participants from Sweden between the ages of 45 and 83. Kaluza and her team monitored these participants over the course of 16 years, and the discovery they made was this. The participants who had the most anti-inflammatory foods in their average diet experienced a 13% lower risk of cancer, a 20% lower risk of heart disease, and 18% lower risk of all-cause mortality in general.
Yowza! Looking at these results, it seems pretty hard to dispute the effect that anti-inflammatory foods appear to have on our overall health. For those of you who want to jump onto this anti-inflammatory bandwagon, it may benefit you to learn a little more about this style of diet as well as how to best maximize its health effects in the long term.
According to registered dietitian Ali Webster, an anti-inflammatory diet consists of a diet that is packed with foods that are rich in nutrients and antioxidants that help reduce the markers associated with inflammation within our bodies. For this particular style of diet, key components for meal prep include fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, fish, and healthy fats from sources such as olive oil or avocado. If this type of diet sounds like all work and no play, then you'll be happy to know that there's still plenty of leeway to treat yourself as well. For drinks and dessert, red wine and dark chocolate also both possess anti-inflammatory properties. Though it hopefully goes without saying that these additions to your diet should be enjoyed responsibly and within the scope of moderation. Remember, it's always possible to have too much of a good thing.
If a lot of this dietary advice sounds familiar to you, it's for good reason. Webster describes the anti-inflammatory meal plan as an on-trend term that describes established recommendations for healthy eating. In other words, if a food is considered healthy, it probably contains some anti-inflammatory properties, and vice versa. For this reason, the anti-inflammatory diet has a lot of overlap with a variety of popular forms of dieting, such as the extremely healthy Mediterranean diet. As a general rule of thumb, the foods that are best incorporated into this type of diet consist of anything that's dense with nutrients, vitamins and minerals, as well as a color that comes from a non-artificial source.
While the types of food you eat on an anti-inflammatory diet are highly important, what is perhaps equally important is the variety of foods that you don't eat as well. In order to most effectively commit yourself to an anti-inflammatory diet, dietitians and nutritionists suggest that you stay away from foods that are particularly high in salt, saturated fat, refined carbs, and sugar. When consumed in excess on a regular basis, these foods can potentially increase the markers in your body that cause inflammation. Inflammation, in turn, can lead to health-related complications such as chronic forms of disease like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and some varieties of cancer. As Webster writes in an interview for Healthline, inflammation is a complicated process that even the most knowledgeable scientists don't completely understand. But there is some research to support that eating recommended amounts of foods like fruits, vegetables, and whole grains can reduce the risk of chronic diseases that have an inflammatory component, such as cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and some types of cancer.
So what makes the foods that we do include on the anti-inflammatory diet so healthy? Primarily, the leading health factor for anti-inflammatory foods is the number of antioxidants that they contain. These antioxidants, combined with the non-processed nature of whole foods, make these foods particularly effective when it comes to reducing inflammation. To quote dietitian Dana Huns, "Our ancestors ate a primarily plant-based diet that was completely unprocessed. That's what, evolutionarily, we are supposed to be eating for good health."
So, how can you start building up good habits in order to make the most of an anti-inflammatory diet? According to dietitian Kristen Kirkpatrick, sticking to an anti-inflammatory meal plan extends beyond simply making smart choices at the grocery store. Even when avoiding processed and overly manufactured foods, some more natural foods may still contain some inflammatory markers, such as foods that include natural sugar and red meat.
Another obstacle to overcome is cost, as healthy foods can potentially fetch a higher price when compared to the less healthy alternatives. Nevertheless, making a significant shift in your diet can prove to be considerably rewarding, on both a physical as well as a mental level. Just be sure to take the necessary precautions if you're going to make any serious shifts to your meal plan's status quo. For example, people who are taking medications as a blood thinner should be mindful of the high vitamin K content found in vegetables. Other than that, however, Kirkpatrick reassures us that there is very little risk involved when it comes to making a major positive change in your diet. So don't let the fear of change scare you away from making significant improvements to your overall health as well as your quality of life in general.
We're always interested in hearing feedback from the people who watch our videos. So if you have something to add or contribute, be sure to let us know by scrolling to the comment section and help us keep the conversation going. Enjoyed this video? Hit like, share, and subscribe to Bestie. Wait, what kind of Bestie are we if we don't tell you about our other awesome videos? Go ahead, choose the left or right video and enjoy.